Good morning. Good morning. Today is Friday, March 1st, 2024. A new month, a new theme, and by the grace of God, here we are. Our new theme for the month of March is God's guiding word, prayer. Today, we're continuing our reading from the 2024 Daily Bible Reading Guide published by the American Bible Society. We're reading today from the book of Habakkuk, chapter 1, verses 1 through 17 in the New Living Translation. Habakkuk 1, verses 1 through 17. Now, the book of Habakkuk is the 8th book of the 12 minor prophets of the Bible. Not minor in their significance, but in length. In its 3 short chapters of Habakkuk, we can find a refreshing honesty and get an inside look at the sovereignty and character of God. The book of Habakkuk pictures a frustrated prophet, much like Jonah, though Habakkuk channeled his frustration into prayers and eventually praise of God rather than trying to run from the Lord as Jonah did. And this brings us to chapter 1, verse 1. This is the message that the prophet Habakkuk received in a vision. Sub-theme: Habakkuk's complaint. Verse 2. How long, O Lord, must I call for help, but you do not listen? Violence is everywhere. I cry, but you do not come to save. Must I forever see these evil deeds? Why must I watch all this misery? Whenever I look, I see destruction and violence. I am surrounded by people who love to argue and fight. The law has become paralyzed, and there is no justice in the courts. The wicked far outnumber the righteous, so that justice has become perverted. Sub-theme: the Lord's reply. Verse 5. The Lord replied, look around at the nations, look and be amazed, for I am doing something in your own day, something you won't believe even if someone told you about it. I am raising up the Babylonians, a cruel and violent people. They will march across the world and conquer other lands. They are notorious for their cruelty and do whatever they like. Their horses are swifter than cheetahs and fiercer than wolves at dusk. Their charioteers charge from far away. Like eagles, they swoop down to devour their prey. On they come, all bent on violence. Their hordes advance like a desert wind, sweeping captives ahead of them like sand. They scoff at kings and princes and scorn all their fortresses. They simply pile ramps of earth against their walls and capture them. They sweep past like the wind and are gone, but they are deeply guilty, for their own strength is their God. Sub-theme: Habakkuk's second complaint, verse 12. O Lord my God, my Holy One, you who are eternal, surely you do not plan to wipe us out. O Lord, our rock, you have sent these Babylonians to correct us, to punish us for our many sins. But you are pure and cannot stand the sight of evil. Will you wink at their treachery? Should you be silent while the wicked swallow up people more righteous than they? Are we only fish to be caught and killed? Are we only sea creatures that have no leader? Must we be strung up on their hooks and caught in their nets while they rejoice and celebrate? Then they will worship their nets and burn incense in front of them. These nets are the gods who made us rich, they will claim. Will you let them get away with this forever? Will they succeed forever in their heartless conquest? This concludes our reading for today of Habakkuk chapter 1, verses 1 through 17. Habakkuk provides us one of the most remarkable sections in all Scripture because it contains an extended dialogue between Habakkuk and God in chapters 1 and 2. The prophet initiated this conversation because he was so distressed about what he considered to be God's inaction in the world. Excuse me. He wanted to see God do something more, particularly in the area of justice for evildoers. Habakkuk complained. He lived in Judah that was completely lost in sin, idolatry, sacrifices to pagan gods, and wickedness were the norm among the Hebrew people. The wicked king had done all that he could do to remove God's influence from his nation. It was in the midst of this chaos that the prophet Habakkuk took his complaints straight to God. In verses 2 and 4 that we just read, and he said, "How long, O Lord, must I call for help, but you do not listen, or cry out to you, violence, but you do not save? Why do you make me look at injustice? Why do you tolerate wrong, destruction, and violence before me? There is strife and conflict. Therefore, the law is paralyzed, and justice never prevails. The wicked hem in the righteous, so that justice is perverted." Does this sound familiar to you, like today? We live in a world even today where there appears to be no justice. Remember the aftermath of 9/11, many of us have wondered when the evil will get their just rewards. Look at our schools. Children are shooting up schools, killing children. Adults are aborting thousands upon thousands of unborn babies. And in the workplace, it's often the wicked who get ahead, while the righteous seems to be left behind. Even in the media, it's the Christians who are portrayed in the worst light. Often, things are completely opposite of how they seem they should be. Listen, if we think about it and focus on it, our troubles are too numerous to list, and none of us can escape the stress of our modern existence. We have so many privileges, so many opportunities. Life is so much easier for us, but still, there are stresses that we cannot escape in our modern existence. Habakkuk lived in that world. If there was one nation that should have lived in God's will, it was Judah. The Hebrew people had been blessed with a special relationship with the living God, and yet they still descended into warped existence of pagan worship. Their nation was filled with violence, strife, and conflict. Everything was the exact opposite of how it should be. And listen, Habakkuk was just tired of it. Do you get that feeling sometime? He wanted justice to be served immediately. He wanted the evil people to get their just rewards. As such, he cried out to God and gave complaints that can be summed up in two words, which I am sure at some point in your life, at some point in your walk with the Lord, you have uttered these two words as well. How long? How long? Well, there is a lesson here for us, even in our modern day. Habakkuk was honest when he addressed the Lord. He didn't try to approach him with any religious talk or any kind of ceremony. He cut straight to the chase and presented his questions directly to God. And we can approach God in the same way. As I close, let's look at what God's reply was to Habakkuk. The Lord didn't allow Habakkuk's questions to go unanswered for very long. He responded by telling the prophet that he would be amazed by the plan God had to judge to the Hebrew people. And listen, we can be amazed at the plan that God has for us when things are so wrong, when things are so opposite to what they should be. Excuse me. We will be amazed at the plan that God has for us. He doesn't give us that plan immediately. He is just working on our behalf. He says, I got you. I am working on your behalf. Whatever you are confronted with today, whatever seems to be the problem that bothers you today, that stresses you today, God has the answer. And he said to Habakkuk, you would be surprised and wouldn't even believe it if someone told you what the plan was. He gave a plan for Habakkuk, and he used the Babylonians to do what needed to be done to bring justice to the people. Listen, whatever is going on with you, God has somebody out there, something out there. A plan is working on your behalf. But remember, Habakkuk didn't run as Jonah had run, but Habakkuk took to prayer. And eventually, his prayer turned to praise of God unto looking for the same through prayer. All right, so pray your way through the day. Walk with the King and be a blessing.